Welcome back to The Last Known Moment. I'm Natural Queen 77, and this is the podcast where we sit with the cases too many people looked away from. Tonight, we're going back to Rocky Mount, North Carolina, a small city about an hour east of Raleigh, once known for tobacco and textiles, now known, quietly, for something much darker. Between 2005 and 2010, at least 10 black women from Rocky Mount and the surrounding counties of Edgecombe and Halifax vanished. 8 of their bodies were eventually found, most of them along or near a stretch of road called Seven Bridges Road. 2 women are still missing today. The press would eventually call him the Edgecombe County serial killer. Locals called him the Seven Bridges Killer. But before we talk about him, I want you to know the women's names, because for a long time, almost nobody outside their own families did. Melody Wiggins was 29 years old. She was reported missing on the 30th of May, 2005, and her body was found just 3 days later in rural Edgecombe County. She'd been struck and stabbed. She was the first. Jackie Nicalia Thorpe disappeared in May 2007. Her remains were found that August near Seven Bridges Road, the first victim discovered at what would become a grim, recurring location. Christine Mary Boone was 43. Her family reported her missing in January 2007. It would take 3 years until March 2010 for her skeletal remains to be identified. Joyce Renee Durham was last seen on a June afternoon somewhere in Rocky Mount. She was 46. As of the most recent reporting, Joyce has never been found. Her family is still waiting. Ernestine Battle was 50 years old when she went missing in February 2008. A farmer found her remains near Seven Bridges Road that March. She had been there so long, an exact cause of death couldn't be determined. Elizabeth Jane Smallwood was 33. She had lost touch with her family, so no one can say for certain when she disappeared, only that her body, found on a Rocky Mount soccer field, had been there for roughly 6 months. Her own brother, unrelated to this case, was already serving time for a separate string of killings, a grief stacked on grief for that family. Taraha Shenice Nicholson was 28. She was reported missing on the 22nd of February 2009 and found less than 2 weeks later near Seven Bridges Road. She had been strangled. Taraha's case would become the one that finally cracked this open because investigators recovered DNA evidence from her body. Yolanda Renee Lancaster was 36 when she disappeared in February 2009. It took nearly 2 years, until January 2011, for hunters to find her remains in the woods off Seven Bridges Road. Jarnice LaTanya Hargrove was 31. Her family reported her missing in April 2009. Her body was found that June, just yards from the road that connected so many of these cases. And Roberta Williams was 40. Her body was discovered in March 2010 by a man riding an ATV. Her family said they'd reported her missing long before a report investigators denied ever receiving. 10 women, all black. Most of them navigating addiction, and several with histories of survival sex work, which is exactly why, for years, their disappearances didn't generate the urgency they deserved. A local playwright, Marilyn Barner Anselmi, would later write a play called Seven Bridges Road, specifically about this disparity, how a missing white woman in the same town drew search parties and headlines while these women's families felt like they were shouting into silence. The break came through Taraha Nicholson. DNA recovered from her body was matched to a man named Antwan Maurice Pittman, a Rocky Mount native with a long record. Pittman was born in July 1978 and raised by a single mother. His criminal history started young. As a teenager, he was arrested for attempting to sexually assault a 2-year-old child, a case that ended in a plea deal and probation. Over the following years, he racked up charges for theft, assault, resisting arrest, providing alcohol to minors, and failing to register properly as a sex offender. In 2007, he was arrested for assaulting a woman working in the sex trade in the same area where these victims would later be found. In the spring of 2009, Pittman skipped a court date on a DUI charge and became a fugitive. He was caught in neighboring Nash County that August and, while in custody, was charged with Taraha Nicholson's murder in September 2009. Investigators noted that he'd spent years living in and around the areas near Seven Bridges Road. His grandparents' home in Whitakers was just miles from where several victims were found, and he'd lived at different points near the soccer field where Elizabeth Smallwood's body was discovered. At trial, Pittman admitted he'd known Taraha. He said he paid her for sex 6 days before her body was found, then dropped her off near the library in downtown Rocky Mount and never saw her again. In September 2011, a jury found him guilty of her murder. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Here's the part that still sits heavy. Antwan Pittman has only ever been convicted of one murder, Taraha's. He was never charged in the other deaths. But investigators have said, on the record, that they believe he's connected to the others, in part because the killing stopped after his arrest. No one else has ever been named as a suspect. Two families, Joyce Durham's most of all, are still waiting for their daughters, sisters, and mothers to come home, or at least for someone to be held accountable. In July 2012, a group of motorcyclists organized a charity ride through Rocky Mount to raise awareness for the women, 9 of them, at that point, believed to be connected to this case. It was one of the only times this story got sustained public attention outside of North Carolina. I want to be really clear about something before we close tonight. These women were daughters, mothers, sisters, and friends first. Whatever circumstances led them to the roads and blocks where they were last seen, they did not deserve what happened to them, and their community did not deserve to be told implicitly that their disappearances mattered less. That's the through line of so many cases we cover here: race, poverty, and addiction, combining to slow down the search for the truth. Rocky Mount is still asking for it. If you have any information about the unsolved deaths connected to this case, or about Joyce Renee Durham's whereabouts, please contact the Rocky Mount Police Department or the Edgecombe County Sheriff's Office. Thank you for being here with me tonight and for saying their names. This has been the last known moment.